This is, now I'm starting this going backwards things, 2012. This was a piece for the Muswellbrook Photographic Prize. It's a finalist in that. This is, before I was doing that, I was just making casts of paper, basic paper mache, figures of meditation, and setting them on fire. It's kind of fun to do. I don't know if you can do this with students. I'm thinking...
You can.
You can? This interested in sort of suffering and death and mortality comes very much from a residency I did at Chiang Mai University in 2011. And this is part of an exhibition at the University Gallery. Because of the materials and particularly in Thai culture, they do a lot of gilding of Buddhas and sacred monks and so forth. So they literally just get a little bit of gold leaf and put a bit of garlic juice on the image, wet it first, put the gold leaf on it, it stays and build up. So I started building up figures. This is kind of one of those 80s distortions that people used to do. You see it as a skull, but in actual fact, sideways, the figure's about 8 meters long. It's actually distorted along a wall. So you walk around and the skull appears as you walk into the space. So those kind of distortions interested me. Some earlier work, I'm now going into my foil period. I have a minor reputation as a person who makes Buddhas out of foil. I've won, thankfully, a few art prizes doing that, which keeps me allowing to make foil. So I brought, this one's just one of the kind of offcuts that sit in my office, just to sort of demonstrate of the kinds of things I do in terms of material. I was interested at the time, having become interested in Buddhism, decided I would like to make a Buddha figure, and I tried various things, and I'll show you some other attempts at making a Buddha figure. And literally, I had a very cheap kitchen at the time with very little equipment, and I had a pot that was boiling and I wanted to put a lid over it. I didn't have a lid. I put a bit of silver foil over the lid, and I realised that holds a shape. That's enough. And started working with foil. Visually, silver foil of the old Andy Warhol era is interesting, but not visually that interested. It sits very much in that 60s, early 70s context. I didn't visually like it at all. But luckily, I lived down the road from the Dullo Chocolate Factory. So I went and knocked on their door, and they gave me a bit to start with, but they weren't very happy about giving me a lot of it. But I got some materials from it to start playing, and I went, this stuff is just wonderful. And for 10 years, I went nuts with foil, which is a lot of fun. So I made a lot of stuff with foil, which is very delicate, but it holds its shape. Did lots of research about foil and went back to the actual manufacturers in Italy and found out which dyes they use and found out which dyes are UV stable, colour stable, and which ones aren't. Because the first ones I made, actually I saw them fade very quickly and the colours went sour and they weren't very interesting. So I now have kind of detailed things of all the different colours, making techniques and inks that they use and stuff because the colours fade. So this piece is probably 10 years old and the colour hasn't faded whatsoever. And this is a really, really cool foil on the outside, just an experiment I did with this foil. This is a laser imprinted foil. You can actually pass it around, it's a reasonably thing. And you can see that it has that extraordinary colour effect. Don't worry if it moves, it bends, you can bend it. I bend it back into shape if it bends. But you can see it's a really amazing foil and it's beautiful. So this is just an offcut of a particular foil. You can't, unfortunately there's a bit of a distortion. They're actually a really fantastic lurid pink. And of course, all those people making foil at the time, you have skulls like Damien Hirst and stuff, so it's kind of a response to just a riposte to Damien foil. I can't use diamonds, but I can use foil. Going back a bit into the foil era, took it as large and as big as I can. These are individual sitting figures in foil, in front of a wall of foil. They're all life-size figures cast using resin of actual people, which is a deeply unpleasant process, but I managed to get about 7 or 8 people to actually sit for me and do it. You slowly build up and worked out ways of doing it. Again, this is not a great, this is about 1 metre high. This is another Buddha. One of the other Buddhas I've done is for Sculpture by the Sea and Sculpture in the City. Another material I just found and went, this is interesting, was literally I had a worm farm I tried to recycle. I put the worm farm ick out one day, threw it on the garden bed, left it for a week or two and realised it dried like a Pise brick, as hard. It's really hard when it dries. I went, that's usable. Again, it's a metaphor for Buddhism. I thought about that works as a metaphor for Buddhism simply by virtue that the core tenets of most religions is get on with you, life spiritually, you're all going to end up as worm food. ashes to ashes, dust to dust kind of thing. You all, Islam, you return to the soil, etc., etc. Same thing in Buddhism. So I decided to make a compost Buddha. In part, one of the things that fascinated me when I got really fascinated with Buddha is the kind of Western obsession with Buddhism in a kind of a decorative, quasi, I don't know what the word is, pagan thing. It's a pagan thing. It's just like, it'll make you better if you put a Buddha in your house. And you go and see, I was looking and did some collage work on Home Beautiful magazines, and pretty well every one and every house would have a Buddha image somewhere. And I went, this is ridiculous. This is basically Western paganism. We're just going to put a soft light. I thought, okay, play with the image, see what it can do. And that's in a sense why I make them out of foil, as gaudy and as consumerist as I possibly do. This is the most gaudy consumerist thing I could possibly think of. Similarly with the Buddha in compost, it's simply the most abject material that I could possibly think of. It's, it is worm poo. That's what it is. It's compost. Oh, sorry, my apologies. The core is actually not made of compost because the weight would get too much. So the core is actually a substructure of polystyrene. Carved in polystyrene first, and then packed on, dried, more packed on, and then carved back into to actually make the shape. Because I knew the weight would be way too much. It'd be just insanely heavy. So if you want to, you can come visit it in my living room. It still sits there. And people go, "That's dirt." And I said, "Yeah, but it's dry dirt."